What's going on, world? Coming at you guys again. We got another quick video. Heaven, hell, and the Garden of Eden. Let's talk about it. So, as it stems, today is Sunday. Happy Sunday. The Sabbath is actually Saturday. Sunday is the preparatory day that you utilize in order to facilitate your uh, successful movement for work, for the work week. So, today we have a day for reflection before we start the work week, which is starting on Monday, and we give thanks. So today we're going to talk about heaven, hell, and the Garden of Eden. A lot of people get the misconception about heaven, hell, and the Garden of Eden being an actual location or place. The reality of the situation, heaven, hell, and the Garden of Eden are actually states of mind, right? It's how you keep yourself, your environment, etc., etc. Now, when people talk about the Garden of Eden and how we were cast out, well, what actually took place and what people don't understand and recognize is it wasn't a physical place, right? We were not cast out from an actual environment. It was a state of mind, a state of consciousness. So, you know, the original understanding and comprehension was the fruit of the poisonous tree. But the reality of the situation was the fruit of the poisonous tree was actually a mind altering substance like a psychedelic mushroom, like marijuana, things that can be found in nature, right? In which were not supposed to be consumed by humans because we were so new, we didn't have the comprehension or understanding um, to facilitate these questions. And this was the original reason why the original beings that we know as angels or demons or Lucifer or Samael were cast out of heaven for questioning God's direction as well as agenda was based off the premise that they had already consumed and become exposed to these mind altering substances, right? So when you talk about Samael, when you talk about Lucifer having a conversation, which is represented in the Bible as the snake with Eve, well, what actually happened is they showed Eve this specific type of mind altering organic substance, which at this point in period of time, we do not have a definitive ruling as to what it was, but the overall consensus is it was psychedelic, right? It could have been peyote, it could have been marijuana, it could have been a psychedelic mushroom, something that engages the level of consciousness to question. And so, what actually took place was Eve took this back to Adam and showed Adam and gave him the understanding that yes, God told us not to participate or to consume this thing, but if God created it, then everything through God should technically be holy. And so Adam, well, he went with the understanding that because Eve was created from Adam and Adam was created from God, and this substance was created through God, that, maybe God failed to mention this specific thing, through some type of issue because Eve had already corresponded with another individual whom was also created by God, right? And so through the partaking of this substance that altered their perspective, altered their mindset, it opened up the opportunity for what we know specifically as a level of consciousness, right? For a lot of individuals, you've seen memes to where you see individuals who consume marijuana. It changes their perspective of reality, and they question very random things and how it correlates and how it has some form of inquiry as to some type of perspective in which you would not normally think or consider, right? And so the consensus is the fact that, well, Adam and Eve shared the same DNA because Eve was created from Adam's rib, which means technically Eve and Adam were kin. So if Eve and Adam were kin, that would make them too closely related to be man and wife, which would mean they were actually brother and sister. So through the concept and connotation of what we know through the Bible, that when God came back into the Garden of Eden, or he came back to have a conversation with Adam, because he used to have regular, frequent conversations with Adam, um, Adam was covered up. He had covered up his genitalia, and so had Eve. And, he asked Adam, "Why were you covered?" And he said, "Because I was exposed." And God asked him, "Well, who told you this? How did you come to this understanding?" Well, that's because Adam had utilized his genitalia with Eve through the process of procreation, because it was understood that if God could create Eve from Adam, then the genitalia that Adam and Eve had could be utilized together to create their own offspring, which made them the equivalency of God as a creator. And this was one of the biggest issues that God had, because we were not designed specifically to procreate with each other that close in proximity. Again, they were kin. They were not husband and wife. They were actually more kin to brother and sister, because the DNA was so closely related. And it goes back to correlation for, the same consideration is, if you were a young individual, or you waited until marriage, when a woman when a woman's hymen is broken, she bleeds, and there's blood on her and there's blood on him. And through modern technologies now, you take a bath, you take a shower, you wipe yourself off. But back in the olden times, you didn't have that capacity. You didn't have access to those type of resources, so you covered yourself up, right? Because normally when you cut yourself, you bled. If you didn't have a comprehensive knowledge of medicine, well, you were very concerned about it. So they covered themselves up because they were concerned about seeing the sight of blood. So as we continue to move forward, as we talk about the Garden of Eden as not a literal place, but a level of consciousness, well, that form of enlightenment, that form of conversation, that form of intellectual experience that you have when it comes to being self-aware, being knowledgeable about your environment, that level of consciousness when it comes to a level of happiness to sadness, to safety and security, to fear and compromise. These are all relatable based off of where you view yourself and where you perceive yourself based off of your actions and interactions, right? It's said that the body is a temple, right? You should respect the temple, because your thoughts give birth to your actions, which have consequences. So when we talk about heaven and hell, well, heaven and hell is not a literal place that you go to. It's actually a state of consciousness. It's actually your reality. So the actions in which you manifest create your environment. And based off of your environment, well, we know energy, and there is a such thing as action and consequence, and laws of attraction. These are all factors in which facilitate your state of being, which can be considered as heaven or considered as hell, right? So if you do harmful things, if you go out and harm other people, if you make actions and choices in which are not good, they're void of moral continuity, then you're going to find yourself in a situation repetitiously in an environment in which you cannot get out, because you've dug yourself a hole, and you keep digging yourself deeper and deeper because you continue to utilize the same actions and choices in which put you in that position, and that is hell. So, these are the things that you have to consider, and these are the things that a lot of people don't take into consider and recognize, that God is always around us. God is always with us, but it is a state of mind in which you have the capacity to tap into. It's similar to what people believe Jesus to be, right? And I've talked about this before in one of my last videos about the life, the death, and the truth of Jesus Christ. You go check it out. And it gives you a detailed breakdown about who Jesus actually was. and what his agenda was and what his truth was. But as we talk about this today, we talk about heaven, we talk about hell, and we talk about the Garden of Eden. You know, what we're talking about still to the day is who you are as an individual, your actions, your choices, and how it manifests your reality. So take all of these things into consideration, because the truest path back to God, because he's always been there, is based off of what you are willing to do, what you are willing not to do, and what you're willing to sacrifice, what you're willing to compromise on, and where you are willing to submit and have the courage to lead and, be as good of a person as you possibly can. Because at the end of the day, you know, we are here based off of some reason in which we cannot fathom, right? We cannot recreate. And so by these means, we have to have the understanding that we are a part of something in which is larger than ourselves. And the only tangible assessment that we have at this point in period in time is our own mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and great grandmothers and great grandfathers, et cetera, all the way back to the beginning of time. And so with that premise, it is up for every individual who wants to find themselves following the teachings of Jesus Christ and the pathway back to divinity, is to bring honor back into the house in which your mother or father could look upon your actions and be happy, and to give you praise for your actions, to tell you that they're proud of what you've done. And that is the premise for becoming one with God, is to bring honor back into the house of God and bringing honor back into the house of your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, and all of the people that came before you. Because when you look at yourself as an individual, well, that's a very selfish thing, because where you are in today's day and time in 2026, there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of people that came before you that have fought, endured, survived, lived, and have gone through so much to where you've gotten your DNA from. They gave you the opportunity to live, to breathe, and to access a state of consciousness to where you can be the best person you could possibly be, and not live in a selfish perspective to where all of the actions that came before you, for all of the people that came before you, were done in vain.